Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are looking at a market that essentially hit the pause button back in 2016.
And really didn't press play again until just, well, right now.
Exactly. We're digging into the London property market. Specifically, we're analyzing some new data from the estate agent Foxtons that was reported in The Guardian, which suggests the capital is finally shaking off this so-called lost decade.
And calling it a lost decade really isn't hyperbole. I mean, if you look at the timeline Foxton's CEO Guy Gittins lays out, the market was riding incredibly high pre-2016.
Right.
Then the Brexit vote happened, and the momentum just evaporated.
Yeah, well, it wasn't just the one vote, though. It reads more like a cascade of disruptions for anyone following the timeline. Yeah, the political instability of Brexit, and then obviously the pandemic lockdowns hit.
Oh, absolutely. But the real hammer blow, according to the data, was the infamous mini budget under Liz Truss.
Ah, yes. That was the event that sent mortgage rates spiking almost overnight.
Exactly. Which completely crushed affordability. It drove activity down to what Foxtons called almost a record low by 2023. So you have nearly 10 years of just accumulated headwinds. And that context is vital because it explains why the sudden reversal heading into 2025 is so statistically violent.
Because the numbers are frankly massive. Foxtons is reporting sales revenue up 30%, and operating profit is up by a third to £19 million.
Yeah, the metric that actually signals the shift best, though, is homes under offer. They just hit their highest level since 2016. So the market didn't just warm up, it snapped back.
But we have to be a little careful interpreting this. Like if you just look at the headline sales up 30%, you might think, wow, the London economy is booming and everyone feels incredibly wealthy.
Right.
But that is not really what drove this, is it?
No, not at all. This wasn't organic economic confidence. It was a race against a clock. They're basically calling it the stamp duty sprint.
Okay, so for anyone needing a quick refresher, stamp duty is the tax you pay to the government when you buy property in the UK.
And importantly, there was a temporary relief in place, basically a huge discount. The threshold before you started paying that tax had been raised to £425,000 for first-time buyers.
Which, in a market as incredibly expensive as London, is a massive saving.
Huge saving. But the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, announced that this relief actually ends on March 31st, 2025.
Creating an instant cliff edge.
Exactly. The surge we saw in late 2024 and early 2025 was largely buyers just scrambling to get deals under offer and totally completed before that March deadline.
So they weren't buying because they were super bullish on the general economy.
No, they were buying to avoid a higher tax bill.
It's essentially a closing down sale dynamic. It creates this intense urgency. But to me, this raises a major problem for the rest of 2025. Because once that deadline actually passes and the tax goes back up, does the market just completely stall out again?
Well, that is the big question. Foxtons argues that while the tax deadline drove the volume, the sheer number of transactions, the long-term recovery rests on something else entirely.
Let me guess, we're back to interest rates.
Always back to rates. Gittins' analysis is that if the Bank of England cuts rates faster, that improves affordability genuinely, rather than artificially.
And that allows for sustained growth rather than just a panic buy spike.
Pretty much. So the Foxtons' view is essentially that the tax sprint cleared the backlog, but interest rates build the future.
Okay.
They believe that even with some lingering consumer uncertainty, cheaper borrowing is basically powerful enough to keep the momentum going post-deadline.
It is such a fascinating case study in incentives when you really look at it. You had these political shocks that can freeze a market for almost a decade.
Right.
A tax deadline that can suddenly shock it back to life.
Yeah.
And then central bank policy that determines if it actually survives the year.
It really strips away the mystery of market sentiment and just shows you the actual gears turning underneath.
Exactly. So here's the thought I want to leave you all with today.
Yeah.
We see a recovery on paper with profits up and sales up. But if a market boom is primarily triggered by people just trying to dodge a tax hike, is that actually a sign of economic health, or is it just a temporary adrenaline rush?
And once the adrenaline fades, can the market actually stand on its own 2 feet without the discount?
Something to think about. That is the deep dive for today. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.